Being a Canadian is a part of who you are, part of
Sure.
your identity, part of where you come from. Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada.
Mm-hmm.
What part of that has always been a part of who you are?
I think the values of kindness and volunteerism, helping out in your community, hard work, those sorts of things, I think, for me, I associate with Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada.
And did that serve you growing up?
I think it was a gravitational pull back to what matters. So, I mean, I think of southern Manitoba as that place of good values and kindness, a conservatism that doesn't resonate with me so much anymore either. And some of that, as I started to delve into artistic pursuits, was something I had to get rid of, or to manage, let's say, or transcend even.
And how did you get into artistic pursuits?
And what was interesting is because there wasn't necessarily a theater program, like I didn't look to my left or right or anywhere in my scope and find a film or theater or acting community.
Yeah.
Even all through high school, there was a drama department, but it was very limited. It was mathematics and hockey, and that was it. And if you didn't do one of those things, so we got nothing for you, So what I did have was really big feelings, hypersensitive kid, and so that needed a place to go. So it found a place in music, but I do associate any sort of expression of big feelings with an opposite and equal reaction from the outside of, ooh, you know, don't be so sensitive. You gotta curb that. Suck it up, get on with it. That sort of stuff, which again had to be managed. And so for me, artistic pursuit was always a struggle. It was always, it's that thing you did, but you had to get over some stuff in order to have that opportunity to do it, which was not easy.
How did you find an artistic home? What did that look like? After music, what was the nature of that?
Yeah, I mean, my mother was always volunteering for the arts, and so the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra. So she was an ally. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was piano lessons and like all the other kids. But I think for me the feel of it, the notion that this is where I could breathe a little bit emotionally was apparent right away. So not in the let's practice in a rote way, but in the on my own, when no one's around, I can be myself through this instrument, through drums or piano or guitar or singing.
So you started delving into music. What about acting? When did that come into your life?
Much later, and it was never a possibility, never a thought.
Okay.
There wasn't that theater community ever.
Yeah.
There were some people who played hockey, and every once in a while they stepped away to do a play, for a little bit.
Okay.
But that didn't exist for me. But alongside of it, music, martial arts, and a deep hypersensitivity that all at a certain point came together, and I was engaging in those things, but just not in any way that was directed towards theater. So while I was in my first year, I just got into University of Manitoba before I transferred to University of Toronto, and a friend of mine decided he wanted to make a film just for fun. And so he did it. He thought the theatricality of me being on stage singing would translate, so I was in his movie. And it was eye-opening for me, very, very, very much so. It was a place where I could actually feel and express things that I couldn't feel or express anywhere else.
What was the movie? What was the role?
It was called Hand.
Uh-huh.
And I was some do-gooder thug guy who was beating up somebody who had done this woman wrong. So the very first scene, I was sitting in the bathroom stall of this burger joint, thinking, getting my clothes full of whatever was on the bathroom stall, like thinking, this is fucking great. Like, this is everything I want to do. Just bucking any kind of institutionalized moral parameters of decorum or whatever else, and just letting it rip. And I never had that, and it was great. And big feelings, big anger among them as a teenager. So here was a place for all that stuff. I mean, it was a revolution. It was this is everything. And then there's validation from it, and I mean this is the perfect place. This is paradise.
So you did that movie.
Right.
And then you left University of Winnipeg, you went to U of T, University of Toronto.
Right.
And you continued singing there, right? You were in a choir there.
I was,
And you sang with Roberta Flack, who I
did.
loved. So what was that like?
You know,
moving
you talk
to
about
Toronto, and I mean, had you ever, you know, that's going into a much bigger arena.
it was a taste of a city with a window on the world, culturally, in terms of music, arts, all that stuff. So I didn't have a specific focus, but knew that it was possible there. And I was studying philosophy. Perhaps I would go to law school, but really, I was just happy to be there among people who were singing and had agents and were going auditioning for commercials and whatever. That was amazing to me.
And you found those people through the chorus, the choir?
No,
or?
no. So a couple people from Winnipeg who I knew who were there, who had an agent. They introduced me to their agent, and they started sending me out. I ended up falling into it.
Yeah.
I was just looking for something to do artistically when I got there, and so was walking by the African and Jamaican Canadian Students Association, and they have this choir, and so it was amazing. I mean, every week. So there's your community and your artistic expression. It was under the umbrella of religiosity, which didn't necessarily work with me as an atheist. Engaging in Buddhist practice a little bit there from martial arts, but they accepted me.
You've mentioned martial arts, which we'll get to a little bit later, but when did you start dabbling in or experimenting with or exploring martial arts, and what was that like?
Yeah, I got jumped when I was 18 by a number of people. It's a Winnipeg tradition that they question your sexuality and then beat you up and smash you in your car.
Yeah.
A lot of people have that story, and so feeling weak and out of control and all of that, I decided to make myself badass. This wasn't going to happen. I was going to be Bruce Lee, and I was going to make that happen. So I started training martial arts at 18 or 19.
But it was with that in mind, self-defense mostly.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So from a place of weakness, trying to make ourselves strong.
Right. Okay.
Mostly in terms of the training in an external way.
Yeah. Well, that's when it starts. I mean, that's
of course. And I was nowhere near being able to have a sense of inner peace or any of that.
Right.
Right.
So you were in Toronto,
Right.
and you started to see that there was a world outside of yours in many ways. So how did the acting start to manifest itself there? How did that start to be
Yeah, so
introduced?
I was studying acting a little bit, drama, at University of Toronto, and again, just flirting with notions of an artistic life while studying philosophy, and would go out on commercial auditions, booked a couple, which was great, and felt like I owned the town, and then a couple guest stars, and like within a year and a half, it started to go okay. I was by my third year at university. I had my pager, which we had at the time, and I would be in some, class on Hegel or phenomenology of spirit or whatever, some philosophy class, and I'd get the buzz, and I'd just straight up walk out.
To go to a commercial audition.
Or anything. I mean, my purpose was clear, and it wasn't to finish my philosophy degree, which I did, but it was, that was my master, not school. So started doing guest spots, and then started getting auditions for decent movies, that would shoot in Toronto, the blockbuster films, getting close, going to audition on set with the directors and like those sorts of things. So in short order, it happened rather quickly.
Now, were you doing any acting training in all of this, or was it?
So it was private coaching at that time mostly, but nothing consistent at all. I mean, this is the interesting thing about the business, that I booked a TV series and then started training a lot.
After that, yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Like that's fucked up. But that's what it was. That was my journey.
But you obviously had an instinct for it, or you wouldn't have gotten, as far.
I don't know. You cast. You tell me. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It started. It went well for me, and I enjoyed it, and so it started paying the rent, which was great. And then they were casting for Star Wars Episode 2,
right.
And I happened to look like the kid from the first one, and my agent in Toronto had some contacts with managers in LA, and so they were going to do some auditioning for that in New York. So that took me to New York. So I bought that bus ticket to New York, because that's what I could afford, is the bus to New York.
Yeah.
I decided to not take the trip back to Toronto after going to New York, to move on to Los Angeles.
You had graduated from college by then?
I graduated, just graduated, missed my graduation because I was working on some show.
And you didn't get the Star Wars part.
I didn't. No.
But how was that experience? What was that like?
It was exciting, very, very exciting.
Yeah.
But impossible in something like that to not get ahead of yourself and think, oh my God, what if? You know. Ultimately, thank God I didn't get it, because I was nowhere near ready for it on any level.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But while waiting for that in Los Angeles, I got a TV series that shot up in Vancouver.
Which was that?
So,
What's the,
it's called The Immortal.
yeah,
Yeah.
what was that like? So suddenly you're now a series regular, right, on a show.
Well, it's an interesting story, because I was in Los Angeles. I had no money, you know,
Right.
still had some student loan debt and relative poverty. You know, I mean, I could have gotten a job, but at McDonald's or something, but didn't. I was pursuing this thing. So I was living at the Sunset Palms Motel. So it was $27 a night. And the pimps and the hookers were knocking and slipping things under my door and whatever all night. But it was, you know, I was living the dream. You know? And I got a meeting with a casting director in Santa Monica, and I was living in Hollywood. And I thought, oh God, like I got to go down there, and it's $8 or whatever it is to take the bus there and back, just for a meeting, you know. Whereas I could use that money for food or for whatever else. And so, but I did, and I got there, and they were busy in the casting session. So I was stuck there with the assistant, and she said, "Hey, do you want? Can you stick around for a second and just meet the?" Yeah, sure, whatever. You know, I'm in this place of like, let's just get on with this so I can get home. And I walk in, and they're in the middle of this session, you know, and they say, "Hey, did you want to read for this thing?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." It turns out they were testing for that was their test for this syndicated show, 22 episodes. So they gave me some stuff. Again, I have this. Sure what the hell attitude, and I walk in, and Lorenzo Lamas is there, who would be my co-star in this.
He was
show.
already cast.
He was already cast.
Yeah.
I read with him, and thanks so much. And I walk out, and as I'm walking out of the building, this assistant comes running after me with the script, with the series Bible, and says they want to hire you.
Just like that.
22 episodes, Vancouver and the Czech Republic, and just like that. So, so that was my entrance into the business in Los Angeles.
Do you think that the fact that you weren't prepared for this and you weren't, you know, all jacked up about it had contributed to how easy it was for you to go in and get it?
Most definitely. I mean, had they given me that stuff 3 days before and I had time to care more about it, it wouldn't have been what it was. Who knows what would have happened?
Why do you think you got cast? What was it?
Part of me being here and not having much to lose. You know, at that age, it really was just shooting from the hip, and my ego was big, which meant I felt small, and I was shooting from the hip, and which is interesting. I mean, on the one hand, it feels like I sacrificed to get down here, but I really didn't have anything to lose.
Yeah.
So that's what characterized most of the auditions I went on around that time. I can always go back to Winnipeg. You know?
Yeah. What was it like to be in LA, though? I mean, talk about getting into a bigger and bigger pond.
I wasn't aware of much of it. I mean, I was aware of the streets that I would ride my bike on to auditions or take the bus to, but in terms of all the business and the I think if I understood the numbers game or the massive nature of it, I probably would have. I don't know, I might have been dissuaded from coming down here or staying anyways. And had I not booked that after being here for 2 months or so, I don't know what would have happened either. I might have gone back to Canada, and who knows, right?
Did you make friends? Did you find a...
Absolutely not, no.
Really?
Because it was a singular focus. I mean, this was part of the issue, this is part of the problem.
Yeah.
That it was a singular focus. I was here for one thing only. You know, miracle of miracles, I ended up getting it. But I wasn't coming here with the notion of this is where I settle down, I mean.
So you went to Toronto to do this series. How long did it last?
I went to Vancouver.
Vancouver,
it lasted
Vancouver.
A season, and
nice
it was great.
town,
I mean,
yeah.
waking up every morning and hammering through 10 to 12 pages of, I mean, it's an amazing education.
Yeah.
About acting, about the technical elements of acting. And I started studying like crazy during that. And mostly because of the fear, knowing my own limitations.
Yeah.
So yeah, on off nights and weekends, I would study with this woman, Mickey Munsell, who was just amazing, just a stunning creature.
And what kind of studying was that? What did that? What
It was
that?
so the greatest thing that she taught me was that what we do is important. that it's not just the pursuit of some lame TV pilot,
Right.
but that you are a member of a community whose tradition goes back and back and back, and since the dawn of time, and what you do helps. It's important. She would really instill in me how meaningful all of this is, you know, which was what I needed.
Yeah,
you know.
sounds like it.
When that was done, I didn't have a community here. There was nothing to fall back on. I mean, all the things that we tell actors to do when they get to LA, create a system that you can fall back on,
Yeah.
some sort of support system, have a life, you know, I didn't have, and didn't have the tools to find it or create it. So I went back to Vancouver and spent the next few years working various shows that shoot up in Canada, very much being a Canadian actor, you know.
Yeah. But were you working on American things? Was it satisfying? What was your experience those years?
Yeah.
You know, was it, I mean, were you loving acting? What was going on?
I think from the moment the TV series ended, it was a continued pursuit of something that I wasn't finding ever. And I spent a lot of years in that, searching for that thing that will get me to a certain place. The thing that everyone looks for in the industry, looking for that threshold that you pass, that you can now say, I've made it, I've done it, you know. And so I didn't know it, but I was sowing the seeds of what I believe now, which is that there is no end game in all this, and you have to do it for its own sake. And I wasn't doing that. I was looking for the next thing and the next thing. And it kept not being there, even though it was there, if that makes sense. I was working, but it wasn't,
But you wanted
okay,
something
now
else
what,
out
now
of it.
what, now what?
Yeah.
There
So
was
how did
always
that affect you? What did that do to you, or for you, or against you?
Made me angry,
Yeah.
and over the course of 10 years or so, angry and bitter at the business, to the point where the emails would come in from, you know, when I came down to Los Angeles finally, full on. I was going back and forth a lot. You know, it just wasn't. I'd get an audition and it would bring up bitterness and anger in me. I'm not going to get it. They're going to this and that. Why would I invest in this? Even if it wasn't expressed fully, but I was half-assing it for a number of years because I didn't have the ability to acknowledge it's not here. This isn't it for me. I'm not finding this the meaning that I want to find in this industry. You know, so and quenched every once in a while. Look, you book a pilot, you know, it's great. And you've got the month or 2 weeks before when you get to tell everybody, I booked this pilot, you know, pat yourself on the back.
Yeah.
I'm doing it, Mom, everything's great, you know. Well, you're shooting it, and then a month afterwards.
So that fills up.
Sure, but it fills up something false.
Yeah.
It fills up the ego, and that's it. So for many years, it was, when it happened, it was an ego stroke and a check. And I realize that now.
And so how did that change? Did it change, and what happened? Was there a pivotal point in that time where you realized, oh, this isn't satisfying me, I need to do something else?
Right.
What
was interesting is, like, as I said, the ego and the paychecks, they would come.
Yeah.
So they would come you know, fairly consistently enough to make a living and to do this. So long as that was there, I was locked in this, I was sort of floating in this place. And then all of a sudden, the writer's strike happened.
Yeah, which was, what year was that?
2007, right? So it was a lead up to the writer's strike itself, and then the backlog of nothing happening. So, and so without the ego stroke and the checks, I realized that I would want to do something else.
And what with the writer's strike, people don't really understand what that was and what impact it had on the industry and on everyone in it. What was that for you? And
I mean, the audition just stopped.
Yeah.
Work just stopped. And if I were an actor coming to the studio, I would tell myself, this is what life is. Mm-hmm. You can't count on the business. So what you have to do is to find the love in it, create your own work. I mean, do all the things that you did throughout your career. I didn't have that tradition around acting. I didn't have the tools,
don't.
You know.
Yeah.
Nor the wherewithal
Right.
to know that it couldn't give me what I wanted. Yeah. So I knew I could get that from other places, from other things, you know, a feeling of meaning or whatever else. And so a friend at a certain point suggested that I should go to a training for the Obama campaign, to volunteer for the first Obama campaign. So I did that, and found meaning in that. And that was a almost 2-year journey, year and a half of volunteering for the campaign in Los Angeles and Nevada, that made me feel whole and connected me to Los Angeles in a much deeper way outside of the business.
Yeah.
and even back to my ancestry and community involvement, community engagement, it filled me up. And what was interesting, because I'd started teaching actors in 2004, 2005.
Oh, and so before all that happened, just to go back to that for a second, so what brought that on, and what was that impulse, and how did that help you, or what did that do for you?
Right. I mean, it just started because an agent that I had in Vancouver would send me younger actors to work with. It started there.
Yeah.
And then an acting teacher that I was working with would send me people as well from time to time. And I enjoyed it. I liked being in and of the work without having to suit up and show up for the audition. It was really fun for me.
Yeah.
And I could see things that I wouldn't be able to see were I in it like they were, and involved and engaged in that way. So I enjoyed it. So I leaned harder into that as well during the writer's strike. But what I did during the Obama campaign was teach staff and volunteers how to express their emotional truth, which really, it was very similar. So I spent a year and a half teaching people how to craft their 30-second, 2-minute, or 5-minute story of self, and to express to voters all over the country what this candidate and this election meant to them on an emotional level, which was so fun. Oh my God.
And so you did that for a couple of years, and then Obama won the election, and that was exciting.
Yeah. And I remember just in terms of, making LA a home, the day after the election, just walking the streets of Los Angeles in my community, Studio City, Sherman Oaks, just feeling like I was invested in this community in a different way.
Yeah.
And that's one of the main reasons why we encourage actors to engage in volunteerism or community engagement, so that they can feel that connection. There's deep connection and giving of yourself like that.
So at that time, you had this behind you. You were teaching. You were deeper into martial arts in a different way, or was it the same kicking and punching and defending yourself, or was that starting to shift in the way you looked at your martial arts?
Right. So same thing. So around that time, again, there was this space all of a sudden, and so I had to fill it. So I did, and I met this ordained Shaolin monk, Shifu Shiyan Fan, who you also know. And he lives and breathes what he preaches. And rather than jumping and kicking and screaming, we learned how to breathe and how to walk and how to sit. And it made me, it brought up stuff in me. I was like raging, no, you don't understand. Let's start doing some flying, spinning kicks. Let's do this,
Yeah.
And 3 months after starting with him, I got injured. I broke my ankle, and I came back and really surrendered to meditation, to Qigong, Tai Chi, slow movements that were not movements of anger or defense, but of connection, of mind and body working together. Absolutely life-changing for me.
How did that change?
Just calming that craving, calming that I need to get ahead, I need to validate, I need to have that shot of ego boost, and money and material things, and letting go of money in many ways, which is such a struggle for actors who are trying to make rent and working at the restaurant. For me, it's not a coincidence that shortly thereafter, I got married, and we have a little daughter, and you and I began the studio. That was a huge shift for me, releasing some of the anger and some of the running and the fear and all that stuff that puts us into a place where we sabotage ourselves. We can't get ahead.
So what is it about teaching that you love or like, or what's your juice in teaching?
Well, there's a lot in it, and I, like you, had that transition of, but wait a minute, is that how I define myself now? But again, bringing it back to working with this Shaolin monk, and the notion of teaching is not, okay, I have this thing and I'm going to give it to you, and then you're going to be great and take care. Really, it's about meeting everyone where they're at, because every creature is different, and giving them the tools to change themselves. And that's an important thing that I've learned, that no one can teach you anything. You can be brought to an awareness of something, but ultimately you have to change. In terms of my self-interest in it, the notion of being there when these beautiful moments happen of human connection fills me up. It makes me a better person, a better father, a better husband. It feels like an honor to be there when two people are being truthful and discovering things about themselves and each other. So it is immediate, and and fleeting, those moments that we discover, and then they go and they're not there because typically, if a camera's not capturing it, it's gone. But the echo of that, the growth, the expansion in that person remains. Hopefully, if we're doing our job right here.
Yeah.
And I mean, the way that I see it, I think you feel the same way, is it's our job not to give people the answers or the tips and tricks because they don't exist, but rather to fiercely defend a space in which they can express their truth, and also assume and infer that there is an expectation that you will find your resistance and move past it, and in that discovering things about yourself. So then it's not this weird relationship with us where they need us to push them or scream at them before they can cry or whatever else. But they start finding growth within themselves that is real, tangible stuff that they can take wherever they go. That's really exciting to me. Really, really exciting.
And how do you bring your sense of martial arts and some of the quieter traditions that we've started to coin as our 5 elements? How do you bring that into your work and your teaching?
Sure. I mean, it's been a journey for me of teaching from a place of ego, of wanting to help and change everyone. And
right.
I need to fix you, so that's my job. I need to fix you.
Yeah.
But rather see the road to mastery as mostly a plateau, and you have to repeat these things again and again and again. Like I said, allowing people to find these things on their own. So my job, just like in martial arts, in sparring, in chess, and business, is to find that moment when it's most impactful to say, hey, do you see this?
Yeah.
Or you've just reached this wall, or ask a question that raises awareness. But for the most part, it's giving people space. And my journey as a teacher has been giving people more space and being more adept at finding that moment that is impactful that will allow them to change for the better, So it's that negative space that I think is so interesting to me, the more I teach, because I think it's necessary for people to actually change.